My fellow Trekkers, over 60 years and 900 episodes, Star Trek has tried to teach us a variety of moral lessons with a variety of character types. Almost every version of the show has tried, to varying degrees, to warn us about fascism and those that bring it about. A message that somehow hasn't sunk in. And in the US, that ignored message surrounds one man. So today, we're going to try and answer the question, does Star Trek have a Donald Trump? Let's try to define who Trump is so we can properly play Guess Who with the right traits. First and foremost, he's an opportunist. Personally, politically, and in business. He's the leader of a cult of personality, always believing he deserves more than he currently has. He's willing to throw his followers under the bus to gain political and social capital. He's never the one who's wrong, and has enough followers, for some reason, that he can lose a lot to deflect and not feel bad in any way, shape, or form. He's smart in the ways of captivating and controlling people, but in general has a very shallow depth of overall knowledge. He doesn't necessarily believe in what he says, but will throw his followers whatever bone he thinks will satiate them at that particular moment in order to further his own best interest. Based on these horrendous qualities of a person, let's see if anyone in Trek lives up to all or most of these criteria. The Pakleds. The Pakleds do have a king and an emperor, and both are titles that Trump would absolutely accept with glee. The Pakleds as a society definitely bear a resemblance to those that elected Trump. Uneducated and willing to believe in anyone that has a single IQ point more than them that will tell them anything that reaffirms their basic beliefs. The society as a whole does fit into the opportunist criteria we established, luring advanced ships into traps to enrich themselves with technology they haven't earned and don't understand. They'll even shoot themselves in the foot by decimating their own homeworld just to make a faux point. While there are just enough similarities worth exploring them on this list, I don't think the Pakleds actually have a true Trump. At the risk of giving the man too much credit, none of them are actually smart enough to even fail upwards, as the Orange Man has made a life around. Their ploys are shallow and transparent, and are often discovered and sidestepped quickly and easily. Unfortunately, Trumps may be transparent, but they're usually harder to dispel. Grand Nagus Zek. This is an interesting tale of two people, though weirdly so is the life of Donald Trump. When we first meet Zek, he's the ruthless businessman who's perfected the art of the deal as the head of the Ferengi Alliance, playing out a scheme to enrich his family. Case closed, this is clearly the closest to Orange Taco Man we'll ever get, right? Well, if this was his only appearance, I'd say yes. But over time, Zek's stance on many traditional staples in Ferengi culture becomes softer, to the point that by the final appearance, he's given women full rights and imposed taxes, which are two of the biggest no-nos in Ferengi society. Moreover, he actually seems to truly believe in these tenets, to the point he passes the power to a very non-traditional Ferengi, Rom, who's guaranteed to keep these policies going. Trump has done similar flip-flops throughout his life, backing different political parties at different times, but when you dig just beneath the surface, it plays into the opportunist part of Trump, where he only does anything he does to gain money and power, but not necessarily because he actually believes in any of the things he says and does. He has no morals or basic tenets, just whatever makes him gains in the moment. Zek, as a businessman, mirrors the Donald quite well. But when you peek behind the curtain, they are very different people. One actually has morals and cares about the people under him, and the other only ever does anything for personal enrichment. Lore. In the first draft of this script, I didn't think about Lore as a Trump type, but after catching Descents Part 1 and 2 on the Paramount Star Trek channel, he clearly fits the bill. There's something familiar about the way he treats the Borg that worship him. The single line that really hits in this category comes from Hugh, who tells Commander Riker, You probably can't imagine what it is like to be so lost and frightened that you will listen to any voice which promises change. When things feel so helpless that you turn to a person that will experiment on you to try and make a master race of Borg, things have got to feel pretty hopeless. And for a segment of mainly overprivileged people in our real world, they convinced themselves that life is as bad for them now as it was for a group of Borg that had lost their sense of collective self after Hugh encountered the Enterprise. While the methods of control and motives are different than Orange Man in question, there are similarities here that cannot be ignored. Namely, how both Lore and Trump use others for their own amusements and personal gains, and sometimes that their treatment of others is inhumane and cruel. Pascal Fullerton. If this name doesn't ring a bell from Star Trek right off, it's probably because he comes out of what many consider to be the worst episode of Deep Space Nine. Personally, I find the episode Let He Who Is Without Sin a very pertinent episode, and more so today than when it came out. Worf joins a cult while on Risa whose message might as well be make the Federation great again. While their leader Pascal Fullerton might actually have a point about the Federation being too soft ahead of the Dominion stirring up trouble in the Alpha Quadrant, he goes about it in objectively the worst way. Meanwhile, Trump only does what he does for political and personal gains, while nearly always doing things in the worst possible way. While their ways of going about things are very similar, there's some major differences between these men. I never get the sense that Fullerton has a need to be liked by the masses. He is a true believer in his cause and doesn't really give the majority a reason to follow him. I think there's something larger to be realized here. In a post-scarcity society, it's harder to stir people up to make believe that some other group is the root of all their problems, when housing, food, healthcare, and other basic needs are truly met for everyone. Whereas today, there are just enough downtrodden people that aren't interested in looking into the reality of what's being said to be duped by bad actors claiming that the deficiencies in their lives are simply because someone else is actually the problem. This is actually kind of a problem, since Fullerton seems to be onto something. The Federation has nearly a century of relative calm, with only minor border tensions to deal with, and a fleet of luxury cruise liners based on exploration and expansion, so the masses don't really have a concept of needing to sacrifice. Meanwhile, in our real world, it's mostly Trump calling things that are neither minor problems or not a problem at all emergencies that must be squashed, purely to inflame his base. Kai Winn. Right off the bat, there's a major difference between the two. While near the end, it becomes clear Winn does not believe in the prophets. At some point in her life, she believed in something with her whole heart. I don't think Trump has ever believed in anything completely and totally. He just kind of does what feels good in the moment, and whatever will gain him praise and adoration. Aside from that, the two are actually a pretty good match. Winn, not satisfied with being the religious leader of Bajor, tries through a coup to also be the planetary ruler. She manufactures a crisis between average people that are just trying to live their lives and farm the land, so she can send in the military and solve the problem she created to ingratiate herself. Sound familiar? While Trump hasn't blown up any schools, yet, he has taken us down the same path supporting active religion in schools and dismantling ideas that go against those with extreme ideologies. We wouldn't want to upset the easily unhinged that believe their kids don't need to learn about anything outside their own religious teachings. Gull Dukat. There are many pretenders to the throne, but in Star Trek I think there's only one man that's evil and self-obsessed enough to compare to the current orange wannabe dictator in the office of President of the United States. They both have a grandiose sense of self. They both demand respect and loyalty. They both have a cult of easily led fools willing to put up with their nonsense because reasons. Though in this regard, Trump may actually be worse, because at least there was a breaking point for the Empok Nor Pa Wraith cult. I don't think any fact or realization will change a MAGA's mind about their dear leader. Dukat doesn't fail upwards as often as Trump does, but they've both been in danger of becoming irrelevant at various points in their lives, only to climb to a higher position of power soon after. But their biggest similarity is the tragedy that neither one has a statue of themselves on the soil they helped destroy.